solving all kinds of problems can be very expensive, it can be very difficult, and it can be very harmful to the soul. Today, a lawyer who practices a different kind of law. That's today, live on The View.
Welcome to The View from a Pew, a conversation among Christians who are out to grow their faith by asking the simple questions, the tough questions, and the stuff you really wish your pastor would talk about. Come on now, let's reason together. It's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so join the conversation. Call 244-0077. That's 244-0077. Now, here's your host, J. Michael McCoy.
All right, good afternoon. We have a wonderful guest today. I'm not going to date this show because I have a feeling we'll probably play this back on another date. So we have in our studio today Marla McCoid, M-C-C-O-I-D. So it's kind of like McCoy. What'd you say? You were the past tense. Yeah. All right. And she is a collaborative lawyer, a Christian attorney, and mediator. And what Marla can do for you is, in a biblical manner, solve differences between people as severe as divorce, child custody. I mean, some of those things that are really gut-wrenching, to maybe just a property dispute. Maybe this is just a dispute between you and somebody else. Maybe there's a bill that hasn't been paid. Maybe there's a large bill that hasn't been paid. Maybe somebody owes you something for services rendered. And you, as a Christian, you just really don't want to bring in the bulldogs of the secular world. They don't care what we think. You know, if I'm going to sue you, I'm going to do it in love. Now, I don't know if that's possible, but compared to the way I used to sue people, there was no love involved at all. It was you and me, and we're going downtown, and we're going to have a come to Jesus meeting, and then we're going to have cowboy justice, and there isn't any Jesus in that anywhere. So Marla would help you resolve really serious to perhaps minute, but still important differences between you and another person. Marla, step right up and get right in front of that microphone and say hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm well.
It's nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's give some contact information. This is your cell phone. Can I give your cell phone, or would you rather have me give an office number?
No, that number would be fine.
Okay, Ryan, if you could just put up there 515-577-9511. And you can find her at ChristianCollaborativeLaw.com. ChristianCollaborativeLaw.com. And if you'd put up there, Ryan, I'd greatly appreciate that. All right, Marla, welcome. How are you?
I'm great. And
nice
you?
to have you here today. Good.
Thanks so
much. You studied at Moody Theological Seminary with a Moody Theological Graduate Certificate in Spiritual Formation and Discipleship. And I just want you to know, and I'm going to ask my partner, Chris, a stupid question. And if it doesn't end up being a stupid question, then it's really a good question. This is the same Moody that our guy is on from the radio, right? That
yes,
I like.
This is the same Moody. Erwin Lutzer.
Erwin Lutzer.
Yeah.
You know Erwin?
I don't, no.
Oh.
It's a big place, though.
Is it a bit? Was that a dumb? That was the dumb.
Well,
question.
no. Erwin Lutzer is the pastor of Moody Bible Chapel, right? Which is the church, and then Moody Bible Institute is a separate organization. All of them share the same name. All originally founded and started under the famous D.L. Moody, of course.
Okay. You went to Drake University Law School, Juris Doctor with honors. I don't know what that means.
All attorneys who are licensed to practice in Iowa have a doctorate level degree of education.
Okay.
So any attorney that you meet would have a Juris Doctor. That's correct.
All right. Before that, you were a wonderful cyclone with a Bachelor of Science in Psychology with distinction. Ooh, that sounds like my wife. She had a 4.0 with extra credit.
Wow.
Is that kind of the same thing?
Pretty close.
Okay.
Not a 4.0.
You have a mediation certificate given by the 5th Judicial District. And you have had complete training in conflict coaching, mediation, and certification in Peacemaker Ministries, which we're familiar with here on the radio because I've had friends on who have gone through that. John Stewart and his wife, Sandy.
Lori.
Stewart,
yeah.
Okay. And then my buddy, Theodore Roberts. All right. So I've got a bulldog in my life. All right. His name is George LaMarca. Does that name ring a bell?
Vaguely.
Okay.
I mean, I've heard of him.
Okay. When I hire George, I don't get to say to George, now do this in a biblical way, because that's not his style. If I said to you, do this in a biblical way, how would you respond to that request on my part as your client?
So in using the collaborative paradigm, we start with just the process that we're not going to file litigation. Both sides sit down at the beginning of a case, and everyone, including the attorneys, would sign a participation agreement that says we're not going to litigate. We're going to sit down and work out the issues of this case in a way that treats the lawyers more as problem solvers than gladiators.
Okay.
And so it's a really different process. It's a big paradigm shift for those of us who are doing it, because you really are looking for win-win solutions. And oftentimes a win on one side doesn't have to mean a loss for the other.
All right. So let's think of a scenario. You have two property owners, and the property owner on the east side of the property line had a tree on his side, and that tree fell over and hit the automobile of the property owner on the west side. We would decide that we would not allow a judge or a jury to decide damages, if any, for that vehicle. You, as my lawyer, and by the way, I owned the tree, would sit down with Frank's lawyer, because he owned the car, and figure out a way to solve the problem.
Correct. And one of the big distinctions then, although I don't do a lot of property law necessarily, but I would say in that instance, one of the distinguishing characteristics of collaborative law would be, instead of both sides hiring experts, which of course will have, I mean, when you hire an expert, oftentimes they have a tendency to agree with your opinion.
Yeah. Bob, you can relate to that, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you're not hired by somebody who thinks drinking all the alcohol you want and driving a car 100 miles down the road is okay.
Well, if they think that way, then I won't be there.
They wouldn't hire you. All right.
So oftentimes we would say at the beginning, instead of either side is the problem, let's solve the problem in a meaningful way, which could include, can we find one person who would have an opinion that we could agree to value and use that as the precept to help govern or guide us in our dialogue about how to work through that, and not get so positional, but be more relational in that process.
So the expert we hired, we'd both agree that we'd listen to what they say.
And generally speaking, oftentimes both pay the same amount to have that expert so that that person is completely neutral. We look to find one neutral person who can just give us an unbiased opinion as far as how to resolve those issues.
Okay, Frank?
Do you find yourself more of an arbitrator or mediator amongst disputing parties as opposed to a lawyer?
I'm a member of the Central Iowa Academy of Collaborative Professionals, and all of us, to have an ability to have membership, we have to be mediators first. Most people in the organization have a considerable number of years of mediation experience. I would say that lends itself well to the process, but we're not necessarily mediating per se. We're helping people solve problems. What I like about the process is, particularly with people who continue to be in relationship with each other afterward, we're giving them value-added skills of how to work through conflict.
Do you find that your clients are more Christian clients or secular clients, or is it a mixture of both?
Any client, I'm pretty niche or cafeteria style, I would say, more in my, not cafeteria style. I definitely have a more niche practice. For me, I won't represent a client if at the end of the day I don't feel that I could sign my name to the documents without fear of doing something that I believe would offend God. So most of my clients, I would say, are Christian. The very vast majority of my clients are Christian.
Well, because Christian brothers are taught not to sue our fellow Christian brother, right?
This is true. Yeah, the Corinthians definitely provides to not be taking each other to court and find wise principles to help us govern our dispute resolution, which is why I was so excited when collaborative law came to Iowa, because I had left my highly adversarial practice that I had been in for a good number of years, just feeling despair. I became a believer in 2008. And so for me, there was just a disconnect between what I was getting up to do every day and what my beliefs were. So when this process when I became aware of this process, I was like, wow, I mean, this just fits so well into what my beliefs are. So I feel like every day I get to be in this wonderful position of walking out a career that meets that's well suited to my spiritual interests and my professional interests at the same time.
By the way, our guest today is Marla McCoid, MC capital COID. She is a collaborative lawyer, Christian attorney, and mediator. And may I just say bravo. I'm with you. Before I got mugged. That's what I call my experience. It happened in 2011. Before that, I had been in talk radio all of my life. And after Jesus mugged me, I didn't know how I was going to do that anymore. Because it was my job to call people out, ask them difficult questions, run them down into the ground, beat them up, and then hang their skull on a post so everybody in the neighborhood could see. And I couldn't do that anymore. And so God, probably much like you, gave me this heart and this hunger to talk about him.
Right.
But not talk about him as in preaching and teaching. Talk about him in how do we live in this secular world.
Right.
So I'd be curious as we go on today to hear more about that experience for you. Because for me, it was gut-wrenching.
Right.
Because there was a while where I thought, I'm done in radio.
Right.
This thing I've done for 40, I'm done. I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, it's quite an Isaac to take to the altar, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're just, and believe it. I mean, I think as I had to go through that process, I mean, it definitely left my hands with the claw marks all over it because it was something difficult for me to let go of. It's interesting as I became increasingly convicted about what I was doing and just the disconnect between that and my faith. God gave me a series of 2, 3, 4 cases back to back that were the worst, most agonizing cases I had in my life. And he's like, basically, you can let this go on your own, or I'm just going to make you so miserable that you want to run away, you know? Yeah. And so it was during that time when I walked away that I went back to do modular learning through Moody. I didn't know at that point what he was, if even I would use my law degree again. I had no idea.
Because you went to Moody to what? To become a pastor?
No. I went to Moody. Basically, first of all, I had this passion for the word that it defies explanation. I'm filling up composition word. The more I learned, the more I wanted to know. I couldn't know God well enough. And I couldn't just do that at my kitchen table. I felt like I wanted to be in an environment. You know, I tend to be a little bit more academic by nature. Second of all, I felt like at some point in time, I might be called upon to use biblical truth to work with people. And having never, I mean, it was like, well, maybe it would be helpful for me to know some, you know, I didn't know the Bible. I mean, I had never picked it up before that time. So if I was going to be using biblical truth, it might help if I knew some. So that met a dualistic need for me to just become more intimately involved with Jesus, with God. And then also, you know, spiritual formation and discipleship. People say, what's that? I said, for me, before I had, you know, on an airplane, you got to put on your own oxygen mask before you can help somebody else. And I had a lot of growing to do. I still do.
Now, is your question in the same frame? Okay.
I want to pick up on where you mentioned Isaac. As Christians, we're a little easier to give up our Ishmaels because they're sometimes a distraction, and we know they're a distraction. So sometimes we'll just give those up right away. But sometimes when we have to give up our Isaacs, those are a little bit more close and a little bit more dear to home. They cut when we have to give those up. Can you speak to that cutting that you was asked to give up?
Well, I'll start with saying that I really feel that the vast majority of my identity was wrapped up in that. At the time I was mayor of a town, I liked being called Your Honor. I decided not to run for re-election because I knew that the fruit of that tree was so poisonous, it just couldn't be eaten anymore. So much of my self-worth was wrapped up in what my W-2 or 1099 said at the end of the year. And just wanting to, it was just a stripping process of
chiseling.
Being identified more with my relationship with Christ than what I made or what influence I could have in the court system. And I think that attorneys, we do carry some influence with what we do, and it's important to use that right.
When we come back, Marta will continue. I want to hear a little bit of her testimony. That's next.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can give these grandkids back if you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We can help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, I'm J. Michael McCoy, and about 20 years ago, I went to a used car salesman by the name of John Hewitt. He had a little shop over there on North 2nd Avenue called John's Auto Sales, and I bought a car. I found that experience to be one that I had never had before from a used car salesman. He was honest, he was dependable, he had integrity, and he did what he said he was going to do. Well, over the years, between my kids and grandkids, I've purchased 7 vehicles from John's Auto Sales. And last month, I asked him to be a sponsor. I can tell you about their huge selection. I can tell you about their years of experience. I can tell you about their honest integrity. But all I really need to tell you is that I bought 7 cars, and you can trust them. John's Auto Sales, 5435 2nd Avenue, Des Moines.
You need a good ride when you hit the trail. Trust the man with the cars, and he goes by the name of Big John. Big John. Big John. From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
If you sit in the back pew or the front pew, it's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so call 244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
Good afternoon, 21 minutes after the hour. We sure are glad you're with us today. This is The View from a Pew live here on The Truth, 99.3, powered by webcast1live.com. Maybe you've never found us before. Maybe you hit the search on the radio, and it goes from 98.3 to 100.3. And for the first time, it stopped at 99.3, and you're going, wait a minute, I don't. And then you recognize my voice, because you and I have talked many, many, many times over the years, playing rock and roll, playing country, playing alternative, talking politics, so this station, that station. You have found a brand new radio station in Des Moines. We're just a few months old. We're called The Truth. We are a 24/7 preaching, teaching, and social commentary. We're never going to cut away from the latest Cubs game. I like the Cubs. We're never going to go to Little League Soccer. We're never going to have some sports or some other type of programming. This program and these programs 24/7 are going to look at the world with a biblical worldview. A little politics. Sometimes it's just straight preaching. Okay, very evangelical. I thank you for listening. I ask that you give us a shot. Maybe every time you turn on the radio, you tune to us, no matter what time of day or night it is, and you see if you like it. We are a commercial station, so you will hear commercials. That's how we pay for ourselves. We don't ask you for donations as a station. But most of all, just give us a chance. Maybe pray about it. If you're not a prayer person, just say, God, I want to listen to the station. Will you just draw me here every once in a while? Because I think you'll get some answers. I think you'll receive You'll receive something from the Holy Spirit that maybe you never thought you knew. Just maybe. Maybe this is the one. All right, I've got Frank in today. I have Bob Montserrat, the Cat in the Hat, watching the chat, and we are just overly blessed. I mean, you know, the Lamb of God himself is almost sitting next to me. Chris Roloff, station manager. What? Hello? No?
I can't answer to that, man. That's terrible. This is like the second most blasphemous thing you've said all day.
Was the first one the joke?
The joke you told off the air that you're not going to tell on the air, yeah.
I can't tell that on the air?
No.
I can't have the audience chime in to tell me whether they think it's a good joke or not?
No.
Okay.
You're welcome to post it on your social media thing. That's fine.
I don't want to. I don't want
to offend our listeners.
How do you know they wouldn't just find it hilarious?
Am I the only one that's bothered by it?
Apparently so. Everybody else thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, well.
All right, let's get down to business.
One of these days.
I've got a young lady in my office by the name of Marla McCoid, MC capital C-O-I-D. And she is an attorney, fully prepared, doctorate in attorney, graduated from Drake Law School. And she practiced law for many years. And then, as I would say in my language, Jesus mugged her in 2008. And she found that she could no longer, my words, not yours, Marla, hang with that brood of vipers that we call attorneys, but yet still wanted to help people solve their problems, still wanted to help people resolve issues among family members in a biblical way, in a Matthew way, in a Corinthians way, not in an Iowa code law way. And so she's in here to talk about that today. Now, I want to go back and tell me about your life in 2007, because you said you got mugged in 2008.
Right.
Okay. So come on up to the mic and tell me what your life was like a couple years before that you found the Lord or he found you or however your theology tells you.
So I would say that, just like any other person who's not a believer, I was living in the world and sort of subscribed to what the world's values are. If it was something that I thought would further my interests or further my economic situation or what have you, I was kind of all about it. And so I lived my life for things of the world, basically.
Did you worship anywhere?
Did not. I had been sort of loosely attended a Catholic church while I was growing up. My mother had actually been in the convent out of high school, but sort of had a falling away from the church. So we went periodically to church, but not anything regular. No, it just went out one ear and out the other.
Were you baptized?
I was baptized as an infant.
Confirmed?
And again, later. I was not confirmed.
Okay. So, and you're married.
I am.
Was your husband a believer?
He was not. And actually, both of us had prior marriages. So we've been married for 13 years, yeah.
Okay. And so what was it, a microwave conversion or was it a crockpot conversion? In other words, was it over a long period of time or did you have one of those Saul on the road to Damascus moments?
Right. So a few month period of time, not instantaneous.
A few months is pretty short, though.
Right. It definitely, I think that the blinders on my eyes were so thick that it would have probably been something miraculous for it to be fast. But yeah. So in 2008, I still don't understand it. Something just kept telling me over and over again, you need to read the Bible. And I thought, that's strange because I don't know if I own one. But my daughter had been to Awana's with a friend, and so I knew she had one downstairs. So I took her Awana's Bible and just started reading it, but not like a book. I was maybe more drawn to Psalms or Proverbs and the New Testament. And and that was, believe it, at that point in time in my life, if you'd say I'm having these urges to read the Bible, it was not consistent with anything else going on in my life.
Okay, Marla, if I had asked you at that time in your life, are you a Christian? What would you have answered?
I probably would have answered no.
No. And that wouldn't have bothered you?
No.
Nothing would stir inside of you?
I think I would have identified myself at that point in time as an agnostic. I can't say that I had no spirituality. I would have times where I did feel like I was being drawn by God and would go back to church. And it could be any number of churches. I could feel compelled to go to a Catholic church down at St. John's Basilica over the noon hour. I might go to a local federated church. It was just maybe But not anything diligent, no.
Okay. As you look back on that now, would you say that was the Holy Spirit? Would you say that God was, the hound of heaven was beginning to hunt you down? What would you say?
As I see, having now been involved in witnessing, God do amazing things in lives of many people that I'm friends with or family members, you can sort of see this pattern of the presence of God in he definitely had his hand in it. I believe that firmly. And I believe that that was that desire that he had for me and that pull. But I think I did a good job of resisting it for a good number of years.
Marla McCoid is my guest. M-A-R-L-A, Marla, M-C capital C-O-I-D. And her, if you can put her website up, I'd appreciate it, Ryan. It is ChristianCollaborativeLaw.com. And that's her law firm in Ankeny, Iowa. And what she does is she works with the parties to try to resolve differences, tensions, without going to litigation, without it getting messy, mean. And you do a lot in divorce. I do. Would you say that's your main type of customer that you deal with, client? I would say that is the focus primarily of my practice right now, or where I do most of my work. I am attending a training in January, Lord willing, in California to also bring in the adaptation of working through the collaborative process to help people who are embroiled in estate and probate issues. Oh, good. Family issues. All right. So, but it would still be within the family law context. Before I let Frank come in here and talk for a second, was there a moment in which that life changed? Yeah. Tell me about that moment. So, I had a sister-in-law who had gone to an evangelical event and really had a powerful experience there. She didn't know that I was having these feelings to read the Bible. And so she, as a result of what she had experienced, was sending emails out to the whole family. Of course, they resonated with me, but she and I weren't particularly close at that time. I called her. She said, well, people say now read John or whatever. Yeah, right. So one night I was in bed reading John and was getting into the Passion account. And at the same time, I had the television on in the background on the History Channel. They were doing a documentary on the crucifixion and showing the process, even exhumed remains and where the striation marks would be on the bones. This is going on while I'm reading the account, and it hit me, and I thought, oh my gosh, you did that for me. And it dawned on me in that moment. It's hard for me to even talk about. It dawned on me at that moment that I had been just like the people in the throng who had been spitting in his face. Yeah. All right, Marla McCoid is our guest, and that's wonderful that you feel emotional about that, because how can't you? Right. How can you not get emotional when you realize the God of gods chose you and then called you, and you were so important to him that he said, come onto my lap, put your hands on Papa's face. I love you, and you're going to be mine forever. It's a life changer. Yeah. I mean, Frank's the only one that doesn't cry. So, Frank, go ahead.
I've got a friend who is a self-described agnostic and training for law. And he's not finding what you found. Now, you being an agnostic and being in law, and what is it? I mean, you kind of described it there for a second, but what really convinced you that what was drawing you was Jesus Christ? What I have found in my spiritual journey is I think God must realize how thick-headed I can be, because he has a tendency to speak through, you wake up in the morning and one thing is on the radio when you flip through, and then a billboard. And then, it just became so overwhelming to me in the truth of what was there and what I was reading. And again, during that time as I was reading,
it was different than what I had read before. They were words of life to me.
So you had no preconceived notion, because my agnostic friend talks about this circular thinking, that everything we do reinforces a preconceived notion or belief. But you never had that preconceived notion or belief before. And this is something new. This is a new experience. So it wasn't reinforcing something you already knew.
I can tell you within a week, everything that I felt that I had known before was shaken to its core.
Yeah. How old were your kids at that time?
So we have a blended family. My daughter was just, my only child that I have was just turning 18. Other children at that time would have been, 12, 9, young, and maybe 5.
All right, let's talk about your daughter for a
Right.
second. Do you remember the moment in which you either told her or she realized something was different with Mom?
Right. Yes, and I can tell you that I went through an agonizing process for, it must have been one of those dark night experiences, because she was just leaving the home at that time, and I thought, my gosh, here I raised her the way the world told me to. We went on nice vacations. She has the college fund. We ate nice dinners. She lived in a nice home, and I'm like, I miss salvation. I wish I could rewind and live in a trailer park and eat mac and I don't know, not to say that that's lesser, but
No, I get ya.
It was just like, wow, now I've missed this opportunity, really, as far as just having been able to raise her in a Christian home and with those values, and have her experience what I was experiencing.
All right, and so when we come back, I want you to share how you and your daughter, because I know that mothers and daughters, especially in divorced families, have a very special bond, because you go through something incredibly painful and usually lean on each other a lot. So I want to hear how she took that and talk about your practice a little bit more. Marla McCoid is our guest. We're coming back live here on The Truth.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Hobbs,
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed. Fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money-back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing, we have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're gonna make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
If you sit in the back pew or the front pew, it's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so call 244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
It's 22 minutes for the top of the hour. Top of the hour, Salem Radio Network News, and then the Steve Noble. Live on the USA Network, our new afternoon drive guy and personal friend of Chris Roloff.
That's right.
Is our new afternoon drive guy. I think you'll love him. I've met Steve. Steve and I have been on the radio together. We were on the radio together at the
Family Leadership Summit.
Yep. And then we were on the radio together. We had him on the show one day.
Yep. Yeah. He Skyped into the View from a Pew. Yeah.
Yeah, and he mentioned you on his first show here.
You mentioned me?
You?
Yes.
Yes, you did.
What did he say?
I was talking about your legs.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. He was just taken by my legs.
And he had a lot of kind things to say.
And for those who don't know, see, now look, this is radio, so you can't see Mac, and it's TV, but he won't show you the bottom half of himself because it doesn't matter what the temperature is outside. J. Michael McCoy doesn't wear long pants. And he's got these beautiful, skinny, white legs.
I have to tell you, that's all true.
It's absolutely true.
The only time now, I will tell you, I will
recently wear pants.
I will wear long pants in the winter, but only when I have to fill my tank with gas. Because I'm going to be out there for, 3, 4, 5 minutes. But otherwise, you're right, I'm in shorts.
And also weddings and funerals. You wear long.
And greeting meets.
Sometimes.
Greeting meets.
All right, my guest is Marla McCoid, MC, capital C-O-I-D, McCoid. And she is a collaborative lawyer. Her firm, put it up on the screen if you would, Ryan, ChristianCollaborativeLaw.com. And what they would do, and we're going to talk about this part of her ministry, her practice in a minute, but let's say that, I don't know, for heaven's sakes, some woman might actually agree to marry Frank for some reason. And after 2, 3, 4 days, she recognizes the dire mistake she's just made.
She wants that 3-day law.
Okay, make it 4. And rather than going into litigation and fighting and doing all the horrible things that we do to each other in divorce, because we really are animals. You know that, don't you? Maybe yours wasn't, and you're blessed. You're lucky. But I got to tell you, most of them are just flesh eating flesh. And no offense to you when I say this, but that's how the lawyers make their money. They make their money because you want to fight with each other. And they make their money because you get mad because he had a date last Friday night and he introduced him to our daughter, and I don't think that's fair, so I want to inflict my wrath and justice. Well, Marla doesn't do that. She's not interested in that. She's actually interested in helping redeem the marriage. But if it happens that it does have to end, it's going to be done in the most Christ-like way we possibly can, even though God hates divorce. The reason God hates divorce is because of what it does to the children. He understands that you should not live in a relationship that is emotional or abusive, physically or emotionally abusive. And sometimes it is. Remember, it's really not the divorce that was the mistake. It's really the marriage. If you go back and you look at 3, 5, 6, 9, 20 years ago, it probably wasn't meant to be. Or you've married someone who's become an alcoholic, or life has changed for them so drastically, they've lost their identity as a husband or a wife. Marla and her company can come in and solve this in a biblical way so it's not so painful. Now, we were talking a little bit about conversion because you were a regular, fleshy, earthly girl living the high life, raising your daughter, your words, not mine, just as the world would see her. She's 18, and you realize that as a mother, you need to bring her around or at least show her who Christ is.
That's right.
Tell me about that.
Well, that was in the context of the time that she was going to college, and so my influence was diminishing pretty greatly. But we've had opportunity to grow so much in our relationship and have many conversations of our own. Of course, she's 25 years old now, and so she's living her own life. And but I really hope, I pray that she sees the impact of what God's done in my life, and I take opportunities as I can find them to share that with her.
All we can do is be as an example.
That's right.
And our children are the hardest on us.
That's right. The next oldest child, though, has recently accepted Christ, was baptized earlier this year, and so it's been a really exciting, just a tremendous journey to go through with her. And
we've got a really happy story to tell that you and your husband, who neither one of you were followers, have both now decided that that's the way to work and to go and to live and to raise the kids.
That's right. My sister-in-law, who had shared the gospel with me, both she and my husband's brother and myself and I were all four baptized on the same day.
That's awesome.
It was great.
That's awesome. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about a divorce.
Right.
Can I use you again, Frank?
Sure.
All right. So Frank is wealthy. Beyond
Please.
me. All right. And he's decided to go out and get somebody about 30 years his junior. Now, he's been married 40 years. 3 children, grown. She stayed at home, took care of the kids. She was a wonderful mother, just as the Bible said. But Frank decided he needed to trade her in and get a new one.
The new model.
So she comes to you and says, I still love this man. He's still the father of my children. I think I want to remain married to him, but obviously we're going to have some repentance. He's going to have to see that what he did to me and our children is unexcusable. Now, it is forgivable, but only as repentance comes first. How would you help her along the road? Because she's got, there's big bucks. Kids are grown, many properties. This is a cash reward if done a certain way.
And so for me, one of the first things that I have to be doing is being conscious of my own motives underneath that. And I'm very careful. If I had $1 for every time I've said, I don't want your money, I want your marriage. I love to refund retainers. I love it when people get back together. I can tell you that it is something within myself that I have to really make sure I'm checking on a regular basis. I do think in a situation like what that couple would go through, and we sure see a lot of it, the first thing that we have to check, the first thing that we have to determine is whether the offending spouse, for lack of better words, really wants to get well. And if they don't, there's not much that we can offer by way of reconciliation or restoration.
Frank, do you want to get well?
Yes.
You're going to give up the young chick?
Quit robbing cradles, yes.
And you're going to be faithful to your wife?
Yes.
All right. So how do those two come together,
right,
Marla?
And so oftentimes what I see, and there was a guy by the name of Dr. Dougherty out of Minnesota who taught a curriculum that I thought was so helpful. He talks about the marital breakdown, and he identifies major issues as being abuse, abandonment, adultery, or addiction. And so in those instances, and really when you think about it, those are kind of substantive, covenant-breaking things. So he calls those hard issues. Other issues like finance, communication, and whatnot are soft issues. Now, clearly, anytime we have hard issues, every marriage has soft issues. And so what we have to do is see but I think that those hard issues almost operate like terminal carcinogens. It's a cancer that's growing in a relationship that if we don't get it out of there, the marriage can't survive. If someone is committing adultery outside of the relationship, we can't fix the marriage unless they're prepared to leave that.
Let's say a man and a woman is married, and they're both churchgoers, and all of a sudden one day he decides he wants to walk contrary to God and become an agnostic or an atheist or whatever. Do you consider, along with physical adultery, a spiritual adultery grounds for the woman either separating or potentially divorcing?
It's hard to make generalizations. I think if he were the one initiating leaving the relationship, clearly I think Scripture would provide that if you're unequally yoked and the other person's leaving, then there may be grounds for that.
Well, no,
he's
staying in the marriage,
right,
but he's walking contrary to God, so he's committing fornication with other gods himself. Mm-hmm. So he's in a spiritual adultery against God.
Right. It's hard to make generalizations. I just generally speaking endeavor to work with each client on an individual basis. In that instance, use any resource that we can to try to resolve things.
All right, Marla McCoid is our guest. We'll come back with our last segment. She is a collaborative lawyer, someone I think that if you have issues that you need to take up with someone, and maybe it's marriage, maybe it's family, maybe it's criminal, maybe it's whatever it is, why not do it the way Jesus would do it? We'll talk about that and finish up next, live here on The Truth.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, I'm J. Michael McCoy, and about 20 years ago, I went to a used car salesman by the name of John Hewitt. He had a little shop over there on North 2nd Avenue called John's Auto Sales, and I bought a car. I found that experience to be one that I had never had before from a used car salesman. He was honest, he was dependable, he had integrity, and he did what he said he was going to do. Well, over the years, between my kids and grandkids, I've purchased 7 vehicles from John's Auto Sales. And last month, I asked him to be a sponsor. I can tell you about their huge selection. I can tell you about their years of experience. I can tell you about their honest integrity. But all I really need to tell you is that I bought 7 cars, and you can trust them. John's Auto Sales, 5435 2nd Avenue, Des Moines.
You need a good ride when you hit the trail. Trust the man with the cars, and he goes by the name of Big John. Big John. Big John. From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
If you sit in the back pew or the front pew, it's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so call 244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
All right, we're back 10 before the top. Salem Radio Network News, then the Steve Noble afternoon. Now, I didn't say him. I said Steve Noble. Same first name, different last name. Our new afternoon drive guy, live from the USA Networks right here in Des Moines. And he's on 3 to 5, Steve Noble. All right, I opened mouth, inserted foot. I said something incorrect last time. I said something about criminal, and I want you to correct that for me.
I don't see the collaborative law aspect being really apropos in criminal situations. Those have their own sort of docket that they're on at the courthouse. They certainly do have a mediation project to help with the conflict resolution of the personal issues after the fact, the Victim Offender Reconciliation Program. So we do see alternative dispute resolution already in play with the VORP program, but as far as actually resolving the criminal case, we really need collaborative.
So explain to our listeners the biggest difference between a collaborative lawyer, mediator, Christian attorney, and the regular guy that's got his shingle hanging out and his law degree on his wall.
I think the major distinction is the fact that we do not start the case as an adversarial case. So the case is not, you're the problem, no, you're the problem. The case is we have a problem and let's solve it. And so really, instead of starting a case with mom versus dad or dad versus mom, we sit down together at the beginning and work with our clients to very early on establish what their goals are with the process. And then we just try to remain consistent in adhering to those goals and values as we proceed. So often people identify, we want our kids to be proud of the way we handled this. We want this to not create just a complete uproar in our family. We don't do discovery. We rely on transparency. We just want to know who has the document and we turn it over. So as a lawyer, I'm not crawling up somebody else with discovery. But we also then need to have honesty and integrity in the process. And so everyone signs a participation agreement at the beginning that they will do that. Not everybody's suited for it.
I hope this isn't a loaded question, but I have this feeling from knowing you now for less than an hour that you are joyous in what God has brought you to do in this world.
I feel most days when I wake up that I am one of the most blessed people.
Yeah.
Because I have a passion for what I do, and I have a passion for the Lord. And I feel that there were years that I felt like it was just a soup where God was throwing all these ingredients in, and I could feel the simmer, but I didn't know, and he turned up the heat.
Yeah.
But I didn't know necessarily what we were making. And boy, I wake up every day feeling like I am smack dab in the center of God's will for my life, where he's using all of the experience and education that I had up until now.
Do you consider it a ministry?
I do. It's a vocational ministry.
I think no-fault divorce is horrendous law. But split a hair between Mac and I, because we've had this conversation kind of before. I suggest mandatory marriage counseling for any divorce. He would suggest marriage counseling for potential marriage, which might be a good idea. Do you advocate either of the two?
Boy, I've heard all sorts of proposals of different ways that we could try to societally create a remedy for the divorce epidemic that we're seeing in this country. I think it just is, it comes along with a society of people who just really don't want to die to themselves. And I don't know how you fix that. I don't know how you teach that in a class or have somebody take that training. It's a hard problem to solve.
How can we expect for God to forgive us when we refuse as Christian brothers and sisters to forgive ourselves in our own marriages?
There is just... There's enough brokenness going around, and when you get into the doors behind, into people's lives and into the intimate issues that are going on there, lack of forgiveness can be a real issue. Confession of sin and accountability can be a big issue. What is it about early on in Genesis? I mean, it was like all of a sudden somebody sinned, and then they're ready to pick up the fig leaves and start pointing the fingers. It was that woman. I mean, really, when can we just be naked and unafraid and be with our spouses and be ourselves and love one another and forgive one another and care for one another?
But understand that's so easily read in the letters in red. It's so easily said out loud, but it is so. And you said it, Marla, die to self. Die to self. How do you die to self? I had no idea how to die to self. God really kind of did that for me. There wasn't much left of me. We talked a little bit about identity. You were what you did. You were your W-2. You were the house you lived in. You were the car you drove. You were the. And Jesus comes along and says, no, I'm going to show you who you are. Right. And for you, it worked out really wonderful because you died to self. You stop fighting that urge to be something that you're not. Right? Right.
And there were several years in between where it felt very directionless, but I'm so grateful for that time.
Yeah.
So grateful for that time. But boy, looking back at it, it was painful.
How often do you find yourself a spiritual leader for your clients as well as a legal counsel?
Boy, I'd love you to ask that question of some of my clients. Oftentimes, it's a vocational ministry. A lot of times what I do in the counsel of clients, I say I'm an attorney and counselor at law and biblical truth. We have to be guided by what the Bible instructs of us, and we need to keep that as a pole star, and we need to make sure that we're adhering to that. On the other hand, so many times the other side of a case, when I advocate for my client, I thought she was a Christian. Well, nothing about that said I was going to allow my client then to give away the proverbial farm, Right. So there's a balance between that. I feel that I need to be tough on the issues, but easy on the people. But I do think lawyers should have to take a Hippocratic oath to first do no harm. And I do think that in many instances in my career before, I do think that we can have a tendency to hurt people.
Yeah. I like your term. You want to be a problem solver, not a gladiator.
That's right.
Yeah.
The whole conflict system that we have is based on ancient Greco-Roman traditions when they would fight to the death and then heal from their losses all winter and then do it again. And they finally got tired of the gladiators, so they just started having mouthpieces duke it out for them. We've used the same antiquated method of conflict resolution for 2,500 years.
Yeah.
I'm so refreshed to see what's happening in the collaborative movement. It is so exciting, and it is so meaningful.
And isn't it cool that God chose you to be one of the leaders of that?
He's chosen a good group of very talented professionals in Central Iowa that I am really honored to be a part of. These are top shelf professionals.
Yeah.
But we, at the end of the day, when we're done with a case, we get along. We don't take it personally.
Yeah.
And these are people I've respected for years.
Yeah, good people. All right. Thank you for being here. Hope you enjoyed it.
Much.
Hope you can come back sometime. Frank, thanks for being here. Chris, you talk way too much, dude. You just talk way too much.
I'll try to keep it down.
Bob, thanks for being here. Ryan, thanks for producing. I'm J. Michael McCoy. If I haven't told you lately, thanks for listening. Really, thank you. I love this job. I couldn't do it without you. Tonight, forgive somebody you've been wishing you could forgive, but just haven't found the guts. Tonight, forgive them, because as you forgive, you shall be forgiven. I'll see you in church.